Hi, I'm Elite Series Angler Cliff Pace. I want to take just a minute today and talk to you about the various different lines that I use, traveling all over the country, fishing all the different tournaments that I fish, and all the different situations that we incur all over the country. I'm up here today on Marsh Creek Lake in Pennsylvania. It's very unlike the lakes that we have at home. You know, I grew up fishing South Mississippi and the Louisiana Delta. And the first line I'm going to talk to you about is high seas fluorocarbon. You know, traveling all over the country like we do, the fluorocarbon line is probably the one that I use the very most. I use it for much more applications and in much more situations than I do, say, a monofilament or a braid. Some of the applications that I use it for could range from, you know, little finesse type stuff, like this is a drop shot that I've got rigged up on 6 or 8 pound test fluorocarbon. I like the fluorocarbon line for this for the same reason I like it for many others, primarily because of the limited amount of stretch that it has and the sensitivity that it has. You know, if it's real windy, a lot of times, like say up on the Great Lakes, you might be fishing for real rough conditions, big waves, fishing for smallmouth that you really don't normally feel bite anyway. And having a really sensitive line like this, it just makes it easier. It makes you catch more of the fish that bite your lure. It makes you take advantage of more of your opportunities. But from a finesse application on up to more like power fishing stuff, like spinner baits or jerk baits, I still use a fluorocarbon for that. And the primary reason I use a fluorocarbon for that, like for a jerk bait or a crankbait, fluorocarbon line is going to let that bait get deeper. So if you want to maximize the depth from a bait, you can put it on a fluorocarbon line like a 10 or a 12 pound test. And because of the fact that the line sinks, it doesn't have as much drag towards the surface. It's going to allow the bait to run a little deeper, and it's also going to allow the bait to have a more natural appearance, especially like on your jerk baits. That fluorocarbon line is going to allow that jerk bait to sit more level in the water because you don't have a line that's floating, causing the nose of the bait to angle up. The 10 pound test fluorocarbon, 8 and 10 pound test is actually what I used over in Tulsa a couple years ago on my jerk baits when I won the Bassmaster Classic. And then when it comes to more aggressive type power fishing stuff, like your spinner baits and even swimming a jig or things of that nature, I'm going to typically use the fluorocarbon primarily for the reason that the limited stretch and also the fact that it has the sensitivity again on this. When I throw this bait out over a big flat, maybe say a grass flat or something like that, I can really feel that bait hitting those clumps of grass, know when to slow that bait down, know when to speed it up. It allows me to fish the bait more effectively, and the limited stretch allows me to hook fish at a greater distance. A lot of times I might throw a spinnerbait or something, if you're burning it for smallmouth or something like that out in open water, you say, well, I really don't need the sensitivity, but the limited stretch gives you the ability to hook a fish out there at, you know, 60, 70 yards. And then the sensitivity, if you take the spinnerbait and use it more like in, say, a largemouth type environment like what we have in South Mississippi, where you're fishing it around lay down trees or grass clumps or things like that, the sensitivity helps you know when the bait's coming in contact with cover. I always like to maybe stop my bait a little bit or let the blades flutter when it, say, comes over a limb of a treetop or comes by a stump or comes through a clump of grass. So the sensitivity of this line allows me just to stay more in tune with what the baits do and allow me to fish the bait more effectively. For worm fishing, no matter what type of worm fishing, a soft stick worm like this or a Texas rig or a Carolina rig, I still use fluorocarbon. And normally in these situations I'm going to use 12 or 15 pound test depending on the environment. If it's clear water and less cover, kind of like what we have here at Marsh Creek, I probably use 12 pound test. And if it's thicker cover, brush piles and things like that, maybe like say fishing ledges on Kentucky Lake or things of that nature, I'm going to use like a 15 pound test. The reason I use fluorocarbon for this primarily over any other reason is the fact that it sinks. When you take a bait like this and you throw it, like this just happens to be a V&M chopstick and it's rigged weightless with no weight, when you take this bait and you throw it out in the water, the fluorocarbon sinks with this bait. And what that does, it allows you to get a much more natural presentation out of the bait. It allows the bait to sink more straight to the bottom, which is what the bait's designed to do. A monofilament is going to cause the bait to have some drift because of the line drag. Basically, for the best way to describe it to me is fluorocarbon just gives you, because of the fact that it sinks with your lure, it gives you more of a direct contact to the lure. It doesn't have a big big arch in the water column. It's sinking more along with the lure, gives you more straight line, which makes you have more sensitivity, and it also allows the bait to work more effectively. Now, basically what I've built my career on over the last several years has been jig fishing, especially fishing structure. Like a football head jig has probably been my bread and butter technique. It's one that I've had a lot of success on traveling all over the country. It's something that I really like to do, and I use the fluorocarbon for that as well. As you can tell, I use it for a lot of things. The transmissions that I get from dragging a jig on the bottom are just as important to me as what I get from looking at my electronics. You know, every time I use the fluorocarbon line, I always tie the same knot, and it's what's called a San Diego knot, and it's fairly simple to tie once you get the hang of it. It's similar to a Palomar, but a little different. And basically, all you do is you just take your line and you double it, just like you would if you were going to tie a Palomar. You get the double portion, pinch it together, stick it through the eye of the hook, and you want to take your main line and your tag line, holding them together, and wrap the portion you pulled through the hook around it 3 times, and then actually stick the pinched section back through the circle that you've created, and then pull it down. And what this does, this knot works really good for fluorocarbon because it has a buffer between the line and the eye of the hook. If you're going to see here, I'm going to cut off 3 tags. I've got my main tag right here, and then I've got the little circle tag, and those 2 little circle tags are sticking out between the knot itself and the eye of the hook. So what that does is this bait moves around and rubs around. It reduces the amount of damage that the contact to your lure causes to your line, allowing your knot to be much stronger and hold up much longer throughout the day. Take an opportunity to give it a try. This knot is the knot I think you need to tie. I wouldn't suggest tying a Palomar knot. I have had very bad success tying a Palomar knot with any type of fluorocarbon line. But there's got to be, without a doubt, some situations that you'll face in the course of a year where a fluorocarbon line will cause you to benefit and have a better day on the water.